Hey guys, let's talk about tonight's episode of The Walking Dead. And there wasn't a lot of zombie killings necessarily in this episode, but there were still a lot of tense moments. And one of the things that I have been saying for a while now with this show is the zombies are one thing, but the humans are another. And that is another really major aspect that the show tends to deal with, and how, human civilization is going to move forward with this world that they now exist in. And, of course, you're going to have those who want to follow the letter of the law or are just nice human beings. And then you're going to come across people who are, you have no idea what they're willing to do, capable of doing, and it's very scary. So we had some very tense moments with Rick in the house alone in this episode, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I find it very interesting, like the psychological element of this series that not only has to deal with surviving the zombies, but also having to survive each other as human beings. So I thought that they dove into that quite a bit in this episode, and it was another fascinating thing to see. So we start off this episode pretty much where we left off last week with the three strangers that showed up at the end. And we find out that one of them his name is Abraham Ford, and he's a sergeant, and he is tasked with taking this gentleman named Eugene Porter, who's a scientist, to Washington, D.C. Because apparently this guy, Eugene, knows how this zombie apocalypse happened, and he knows maybe how to fix it. So apparently they've been in communication with these people in Washington, but as of late they've gone radio silent. So they're heading to Washington, D.C. so that they can hopefully come up with a solution to this major zombie problem that we seem to be having. So of course Tara was in the truck with these three people, and the third person, her name was Rosetta Espinoza, and I guess she is the love interest of Abraham. We kind of got that out through Tara near the end of the episode. So Tara and Glenn are in this truck, and of course Glenn is knocked out for most of this episode, and he pretty much comes to about halfway, 3/4 of the way through this episode. And when he wakes up, he's like still kind of dazed and confused. He doesn't know what's going on. And apparently they are 3 hours past where they passed the bus. And of course, in Glenn's mind, he's thinking the last time I saw my wife, Maggie, was when I was almost getting on the bus, and she left to go try to find her sister, and then for all he knows, she got back on that bus and it took off. So he was clearly knocked out on the bridge, and he has no idea where she is. So when he finds out that they're like 3 hours away from where they were, he's like yelling at Abraham to stop the truck, and he wants to get out. And of course, at this point, it's like, dude, that's a long walk, but a man determined is a man determined. So him and Abraham get into this altercation, and they get into this fight because obviously he doesn't really know who this Abraham guy is. And this is when he tells him, he's like, what you're doing right now could get in the way of us saving all of mankind. And Glenn's like, what are you talking about? And this is when we find out who they are, who the scientist guy is. And Glenn's like, well, good luck with that. And he's going to head back to see if he can find Maggie. So, it's kind of one of those moments where you're like, oh, he's faced with a tough decision, but clearly his decision is always going to be to choose Maggie over anything else. Because at the end of the day, what world is he going to live in if it's not with the people that he loves? Or, even if they don't end up saving the world, at least he's going to be with the person that he loves for as long as he possibly can be, right? So I guess that's pretty much where his head is. It's like, why do I want to go somewhere where I can be alone if we're going to save the world, in his frame of mind. So he goes and he wants to leave, and of course Abraham doesn't want him to. They get into a fight. Meanwhile, these walkers start coming out of the crops on the feet, like in these, like the crops up the side of the road, and a Eugene who's clearly a scientist and not man who's trained with a gun. But you would think after all this time of being out there, he would know how to frickin' use a gun. So he's struggling. He's, trying to get the gun going, and he's yelling to the guys, and they're not listening because they're fighting over there. And he riddles off some bullets, and that's when it gets everybody's attention. But he shoots the truck and, of course, shoots out some important part under the truck. So now they're on foot and they're heading back in the direction that they just came from. It's kind of like, okay, here we go again. So, the last little, one of the last moments where Eugene is like, well, let's go back with them because we have no choice. And he's like, I'm the smarter one anyway, and this is the best decision that we can make. So here they go, back on foot, and they're heading back to see if they can find Maggie and the rest of the gang. So while they're on this little journey, Abraham is asking Tara, like, he's basically saying, I know you're loyal and that's why you're going to go with Glenn. But, he's like, this is the wrong decision to make. And she's like, well, why are you driving all the way to Washington, D.C.? You don't even know if Eugene knows what he's even doing. And he's like, well, he has the answers and that's the only thing that we can trust right now. So, she doesn't really trust, I think, Abraham as much as he would like her to, but I mean, we're just getting to meet him. I don't trust him either at this point, but it sounds like he's, a sergeant. He's loyal. He's going to do whatever he can to save himself, save the people around him. And like he kept saying to Glenn, we need people. Like, numbers are our best, bet right now. We can't just be breaking off one by one. So, of course, now they're back on foot, heading back into the direction where they just came from. So we'll see if they make it to Sanctuary, if they make it anywhere before these zombies swallow them whole. So the other storyline going on in this episode was Rick, Michonne, and Carl. And we had, again, some really great scenes with Michonne and Carl. And just like we said in the first episode back from the mid-season finale was, Carl needs that female role model in his life. And, his dad is his dad, but he can't be all things. And even Rick said, I can't be his best friend and his dad. He needs you. So, Carl was laughing off the top of the episode and they were joking around about soy milk and blah, 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 blah. And then he brings up Judith and he just internalizes and, clearly this is something that he's still dealing with because he thinks that his baby sister's dead. And, just again, one more loss on his checklist. So you can see that Michonne is really opening up and she's, trying to reach out to Carl. And it's really nice to see. So, Michonne and Carl and Rick have this scene in the kitchen and he's like, I understand if you want to retreat again and she's like, I'm done with that. Like, she's just like, that is the old me. This is the new me now. I'm done with running off and, trying to get revenge or doing whatever it was that she was all about at the beginning of season 4. So that's a good thing. It's good to see that we're not going to have any more sort of backsteps from Michonne. She's just moving forwards. And we got a lot of that in this episode because she even opened up to Carl and she told Carl that she had a son and that his name was Andre and that, he died after this whole zombie apocalypse. And it was a moment that Carl and her could really share in because this to him he realizes that she understands the loss that he thinks he's feeling right now because he believes his sister's dead. So it was nice that even when she told him, he said, I'll keep your secret. And she's like, it's not really a secret. He's like, well, I'll keep it anyway. And it's nice that they can have these conversations. And I think that it's like, for both of them, it's like peeling off a layer of the onion, you know what I mean? Just like getting to the center and the core of who they really are. And Michonne's personality came out. She was smiling like from ear to ear in a couple scenes. And you're like, whoa, this is like so weird. This was actually Michonne from the dream sequence that we saw when she was back in her home holding her son. And, so it was really kind of nice to see her and, just her with the cheesy string and like trying to make light of everything and asking Carl like what he got from the house, comic books or, any good candy or whatever. And, she's just trying to keep the conversation going with Carl because obviously she sees that, the death of his sister is really affecting him. So when she opens up to him and lets him know that she, in a roundabout way of saying, I know what you're feeling because I've felt it too. So of course they're in this house and there's a painting leaned up against a door, and she looks at it, and it's like this creepy picture of a face, and it's like basically looks like a zombie's eaten at the face. So she all of a sudden gets this weird feeling like something is behind that door. So when she opens up the room, she's walking through the room, and then it's a kid's room, and then she goes and opens another door, and it's like this bright pink room, and when she looks closer, there's two bodies on each like twin bed, and then there's like a child in a rocking chair, or an adult. I couldn't really tell which way it went. But, it was just one of those moments where you're hit with that reality of people who just decided to kill themselves because they didn't want to be, them to take their family and have one turn, and then whatever would happen with the rest of them. They just kind of made that decision together. Kind of reminded me, I don't even know why, but it kind of reminded me of that scene in Titanic when, the boat's going down and the mother takes her two children and she puts them, they go back down to like steerage, and they're in, the bunk beds, and she's like reading them a story just to sort of, tell them it's all going to be okay, and they're just going to go down with the ship. And it just kind of reminded me of that moment where the whole family basically just says, we're just going to go together and end it and be together as a family, but die, and it was just heartbreaking. And then, when she sees that, of course, it brings another tear to her, and she closes the door really quickly, and Carl's right outside the door, and he's like, is there a baby in there? She's like, no, it's a dog. And it's just one of those things where, obviously she still wants to protect him from what, he's seen so much death, and there's no need to show him more. And especially when you know that it's a family that killed themselves and not like a zombie that got to them, you know what I mean? So that was another really nice moment that she could share with, not share, but protect him from, and just sort of be that kind of mother figure to Carl, without him even realizing it. So I'm really liking the dynamic that's happening between the two of them. And, the two of them off going to find food, and, was just great. So, of course, we have Carl now resting because, he was beaten within an inch of his life a couple episodes ago, and he's still a little aily. So, Michonne's like, just take another day, rest, just, we'll take care of the food, we'll find stuff. So, of course, he's in the house, and then he hears these voices, and it's these male voices, and so he quickly realizes that there's other people in the home. So he hides under the bed. And it's one of those things where you would think he would just be like, hey, I'm a human and you're a human. Like, let's bond together and like, let's, work together to get ourselves out of this mess. But it's like, I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to steal from me? Like, you just don't know. So he hides, and it's just very interesting that is the human reaction to have towards other humans. You know what I mean? And so that's the world they live in, because as we've seen with the governor, people just want to take what you have. And if you remember there was another episode in season 4 when it was focusing on the governor, and he was with that other group, and they stumbled across another group of people that were like in the woods, and somebody had slaughtered them and obviously taken whatever they had. And you could tell that they weren't killed by zombies. They were killed by other humans. So, there's that element in this world that is frightening, because you think that you can turn to another human and be like, hey, you're like me. We're struggling. We need to find shelter, food, let's work together. But it's like, no, I don't trust these people. I'm hiding from them. So very terrifying. And then, of course, it plays out just as you expect, because the guy's on the bed, and then the guy's like, I want that bed. And then he like basically smothers the guy for the bed. And it's like, what? Like, that is the criminal mind that is going on right now. So, Rick is fearing for his life. I'm like, oh my God, Rick, how are you going to get out of this mess? He gets out of the bed. He's like slithering through rooms, trying to hide from these like redneck crazies. And then he stumbles into another room where this guy's on the toilet, and then they get into a fight, and you're like, oh my God. So it's just crazy. And that's, I think, the psychological craziness of this show right now, that it's not just zombies, it's other people that you're worried about, and you can't trust anyone. So, he makes his way out of the house, and in the back of his mind, he knows that Michonne and his son are coming back to the home, because they just went out to get food and they're coming right back. So he has to now go into like protective mode, and he's still recovering, right? So he scales down the side of the house and he's hiding in the bushes, and he's got this guy's machine gun now, and then one of the dudes comes outside and he's like eating cherries or whatever out of a can, and he's just like, just gross. Just gross. And he's just sitting on the edge of the balcony, and all of a sudden you see Michonne and Carl coming down the street, and you're like, oh my God, don't let them see him. And Rick is just about to like, go into Superman mode and attack the guy from down below, and then I guess a zombie got into the house somehow. And you start hearing gunshots go off. And so he just, he hightails it out of there. And he just starts yelling to Michonne and Carl, like, run, run, run. So they get out of there. And now they're walking down the train tracks. And obviously now they see this sign for the sanctuary. And they agree that that's where they're going to head. So in my mind, I'm assuming that in next week's episode, they're going to meet up with at least Tyrese and Lizzie and Micah and Carol. And that's when they'll find Judith. That'll be nice. You know what I mean? But, we don't know if Daryl and Beth ended up going down that way. We know that they were by the train tracks, but did they follow it? You know what I mean? And then, of course, we've got Maggie and Sasha, and they're off somewhere. So who knows? But, again, they chose this episode to go sort of half quiet, half like some shocks. And it was good. Like, it worked for me. I enjoyed it because, again, with them peeling back the layers of Michonne and Carl, I mean, I know that they're not the main characters, but they are giving us these good, rich character developments, which are great because then they're weighted in us. Like, so if Michonne dies, we're gonna feel that as the audience. You know what I mean? I don't think they're ever gonna kill off Carl, but Michonne could die. Like, she could just go. But at least with her death, you feel like she was a friend. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you feel like you knew her. You felt her struggle. You felt her story arc coming, and now she's involved in your story, the story of this show. And if she goes, it's devastating. We've already got that with Glenn, and we've got that with Daryl. We don't have it with Beth that much, but now they're trying to really give Michonne some life, and that's good. Even when she comes out in the kitchen and she's wearing the shirt, and Carl's laughing at her, it's like, yeah, because nobody's seen her with regular clothes on. So it's just funny. They've taken her out of that, like, that tough exterior, which is good. They've softened her up a bit. So we'll see what happens when the whole Scooby gang gets back together. But yeah, another good episode. And these dudes, like, all I know is that these crazies that were in the house, please don't catch up to the rest of the people, because you're cray. And no, we don't need that. We don't need that. It's good to see that Abraham doesn't seem like he's crazy, that he is kind of one of the good guys, so that's good to know. But we'll see what happens. The show is always full of twists and turns, so we'll see. All right, guys, that has been my review. I really enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought. Leave a comment down below. Subscribe, like, share it with anybody. And yeah, we'll see you next week.